Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna talk about heat isolation, how you can wrap the exhaust. There's a few different methods out there. I used a few over the past few years. Some are better than others and some are obviously more expensive than others. So let's start with the most obvious one, the wrap I did for the exhaust to protect the rear differential. It's just a heat wrap. I just show you a few pictures of that video. Stand tall, there's a higher road to take it. Let go of everything that you know and be wild in the mystery. Yeah. I've been in the darkness for 40 days. Nothing too complicated. Yeah, it's just a very thick wrap you can put around things, mostly hot things like exhausts, for example, and it keeps the heat in the exhaust. It's also used for headers as well. I used it at headers as well, but I'm not a big fan of this because when it gets really hot, like before a turbo, like headers get, and they get really hot, they get glowing hot. They just don't live that long. It's just not gonna last very long. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of this. And so we used another method after, I think at the first year with the Evo, we used wrap for the header and we changed that twice in the same year. Because it just, I don't know, brittles away. It gets very stiff and yeah, brittles away when it gets hot over time. So it's not the ideal solution for headers, for example, or maybe in my opinion not even downpipes, because they just are too close to the turbo and get too hot, so I wouldn't suggest that. For headers and downpipes there are much better solutions, and this is it. It's the same as, or the same procedure and the same material as the HJS downpipe uses. It's also very common in motorsport, like F1, DTM, etc. I don't know if F1 actually still uses this, but most GT3 teams use something like this, or most GT3 cars, exhausts are isolated with something like this. Even modern supercars are using this because it works very well. So we're in luck because there's a little bit of unwelded stuff around here, so I can show you what it looks like. I hope you can see it right here, the white fabric. It's just a heat isolation mat that you put around the exhaust or whatever you want to isolate, and then it gets this foil around it and it gets welded, as you can see, a lot of welds. So that is welded to the exhaust. The difference between non-isolated and isolated is huge. I'm gonna show you a quick video I made with the Evo where we isolated the header, and I just measured on a dyno run the difference between isolated part and non-isolated part, and the difference is huge. So what we've done with the GR Yaris, the HJS downpipe is already isolated like that, and because we're running on the racetrack, this downpipe without cat or anything from garage width bits, I decided I need some rep, so I got it isolated as well. And what I also did was this part. That's the lower part from the downpipe to the OPF, GPF, the ones that have it. This one has not. It's just one big pipe with a silencer, obviously. The second part of the exhaust, the one around the rear differential, it would be perfect to isolate it like this as well. But it's, as said before, it's not very cheap. So I used the rep like before, like with the OEM exhaust, but I did something a little bit different this time. And I used this to protect it a little bit. This should seal the rep a little bit and help it get more resistant against chemicals or oil or wear or whatever. And so I sprayed the whole rear part of the exhaust I wrapped with this, and hopefully it lasts a little bit longer. And it also helps to isolate the exhaust even more. It's also heat resistant to, I think it's 1100 degrees Celsius. Fahrenheit is a little bit more. So that's basically what we did to isolate the exhaust. There's a few more options available, like coating. I've never done that. I'm not sure if that's a really good option to coat exhausts. I honestly have no idea. I know a few people who did it, and yeah, I never heard anyone complain, but I'm pretty sure a very thin coat isn't or won't be as good as something like this. And these last nearly for a lifetime, so as long as you have the car, this will last very long. So I'm gonna show you how I wrapped the exhaust and spray painted it. I just show you the finished result. I forgot to let the camera run while I was doing it, but you've already seen it. If not, just check the video where I isolated the exhaust. This time it's just with a coat of paint. So, gonna show it to you right now. And this is how it looks. I obviously not painted the bolts and stuff, and not all of the fabric, but you get the idea. That was just also up here. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it will work, and it will just protect the exhaust a little bit more, and also protect obviously the rear differential. And isolating that big part would have been pretty expensive, so I just did that. I haven't isolated this part because that's not near anything critical, and I don't care how hot it gets in there. So I just isolated the parts that I think are necessary. That's the downpipe, the lower part of the downpipe, and the part around the rear differential. And yeah, that's basically what I did. If you have any questions about isolating parts or the wrap or anything like that, just let me know and I hope I can answer it for you. And if not, I maybe point you in the right direction to where to ask the questions. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.